And welcome back to Luminary Leaders Live. My name is Shelly Harrison, and I'm your host. And I'm also the CEO of Luminary Leaders, where we represent CEOs and thought leaders to use speaking to leverage their products and services. And we do a whole bunch of other things too. So today I have an amazing guest who I've known for a few years now, and you see him next to me, Hassan Archer. And he's going to tell you a little bit about himself, but I just want to make sure if you're watching, please make sure that you watch all the way through, because this is going to be a very interesting conversation about Chat GPT, AI. So it's going to be fascinating. And Hassan has a lot of great things to share about the platform. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Hassan Archer.
Hello.
Hassan, how are you?
I'm doing great, Shelly. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, well, and I'm excited because I know that you and I have known each other for a few years. And in fact, you were on one of my radio shows early on when I first started in the broadcasting.
Yes,
So, here
yes,
we are, fast forward a few
yes.
years, and a lot's changed, right?
We've come a long way since. Yes, we have.
We Yes, most definitely. And Hassan, I would love for you to kind of share a little bit about, I know that you have your company,
Mhm.
Hassan Archer Consulting, and I would love for you to share about what you do and then also what makes you wildly excited about the work you do.
Sure. So I'm a consultant for my company, and what I do is I really specialize in helping companies get unstuck. So I work with executives who are trying to get their organization to the next level. They're trying to identify and maybe fix some problems that have been causing some ongoing issues in the organization or product development, and then just adapting products to a changing market. My background is actually software. I was at Microsoft for 8 years. I worked for
Yeah.
a large collection of startups, both directly and as a consultant. And then I did a pivot and actually went to grad school and studied marriage and family therapy, focusing on systems
Oh,
and leading change in complex systems. So I
yeah.
basically pull all that together now and help companies make these changes that sometimes they know they need to make, but it's really hard to make those changes from within, or sometimes understand what's broken and then come up with a plan to fix it. So
Yeah.
as far as what really makes me passionate about it, it's really, I love to see people change and growth. I believe very strongly that things can improve, people can improve, and I think we spend so much of our lives at work that if
Yeah.
I can help make that more palatable for people and help them get more out of the time they spend there, that makes me really happy.
Yeah. And I know I've had some interactions with you, and I'm just really intrigued by your expertise, by your skill level, and things that, that you've helped companies with, that I've heard about, the processes that you use. And I just really want to applaud you for your work, Hassan, because I
Thank
know
you.
yeah, and today the conversation that we're going to have, it does apply to both of our companies, and everybody that's going to be watching today.
Mhm.
So let's kind of get into, if you could give an overview, because a lot is going on about Chat GPT and all the AI, you know, chat type of things that are out there. And there's other, or,
Mhm.
other platforms, but today we're focusing on Chat GPT. So can you give a little overview of, kind of the nuances of what it does?
Sure, sure. So Chat GPT at a high level is really just a natural language processing tool,
Mhm.
that allows you to have conversations and access information in an easier way. So there's a lot that goes into that, and a lot of algorithms and big data and
Yeah.
terminology, but really it's just about having an easier interface to get answers to the questions and the information that you really care about. And for the first time now, this is available to everybody, right? ChatGPT is now available. You can sign up for it and start asking questions and just doing a whole bunch of use cases. And just it's just like this Swiss Army knife tool to access data and get questions answered. And it's an assistant. I mean, it's so many things, and it's just, I think we're on the cusp of really a big. This is a big transformational change we're seeing.
And I think you're right. And you see me smiling and shaking my head because I have been using it. And I was just sharing with you back in the green room that I used it today on some posts that we did for Women's History Month. And,
Mm.
of course, I made some of it my own and I grabbed some things from Chat GPT. But I think the idea of having access to this kind of information. I mean, you can ask just about anything, I know, but there are, some guidelines in terms of limitations, and I understand that it knows when there are things that are asked that are inappropriate.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
So there is a human layer that's on top of it where some adjustments are made for the types of things that you can use it for, because like any good tool, it does need to have some guardrails.
Yeah.
But the potential here is just off the scale, and we're just at the cusp. This is the first version. This is 3.0.
Yeah.
Later versions are going to be much more powerful, have access to much more data, and it's just going to be spectacular.
I agree. And when I look at businesses, how do you see Chat GPT? I mean, what does this mean for companies that are, whether it's a Fortune 500 company or, a smaller mom and pop type company that is considering using this and having access to it?
Yeah, I think for companies, everyone should really take a look at this. And if you haven't played with it or just done some research, you really need to do it, because it's going to be a game changer. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily think it's going to replace humans, and there's some talk about that.
I don't
And
either.
what are
Yeah.
we all going to do? Are we all going to just sit around and you know
And
twiddle our
let it
thumbs?
type.
Right, but
Ask the
that's not
question and it
really.
types for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not really where we're headed. I think really what companies need to do is they need to step back and say, what does this mean for my business? So
Mhm.
specifically for my product line, my competition, my workforce, how do I take advantage of this, right? And I think in a
Yeah.
lot of cases, it's not, as I said, it's not replacing people, but it's making them more efficient. And so if you can get a 20% more efficiency out of everyone at your company, if you break down their jobs and look at what they do, that's
Mhm.
huge for your bottom line.
Absolutely. I mean, looking at marketing departments or people that are tasked with, doing social media for larger companies. I mean, it's a way to access information that, it is as good as you ask the question, right? Because I
Hmm.
think you have to be not real specific. You could put, there's certain commands that you can put in there. I know I've tried many different commands that are relative to my business, that about my clients, thinking, okay, will it show, anything about my clients? And it hasn't, which
Hmm.
was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Although I think a lot of people, once they start using it, they'll see that, it does, I think, go back to anything after 2021 is not on there. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. It is an
Yeah.
older data set that they pulled together to run all these um, computational analysis on and
Yeah.
develop a natural language layer for that. And so the data is not even new. So you imagine now, since 2021, how much new information is on the internet that can be
Yeah.
crawled, books, databases, even just Wikipedia entries, all the things that were used to create the data set for Chat GPT. It's going to be exponential growth as we get the new versions
Yeah.
of it.
Oh, I agree. And, you as a business owner,
Mhm.
Hassan, how are you using this with your clients?
Yeah, so I have used it in terms of, I would say for myself, just understanding, for example, marketing.
Mm,
That's something that, how do you describe what you do? How do you
yeah.
find out what the trends are in your industry? How do you, I work with companies among many different industries: finance, insurance, entertainment, healthcare, mental health. There's just a lot of different areas that I've worked in. And part
Yeah.
of the work I do is to understand the industry, to really understand what the
Mhm.
pain points are, what the opportunities are. And Chat GPT does a really, really great job of just summarizing vast amounts of information and distilling it down into
Yeah.
something bite sized. So that's a huge time saver.
It truly is. And, when you think of the capabilities, when people are working on an article or they're working on a proposal, or I mean, just fill in the blank, it really has a multifaceted delivery, where you can do some of these things that
Mhm.
could take your business to a whole new level.
It really does. And what I've seen some companies doing now is everyone's talking about it. And so what I see a lot of companies starting to do is to actually get out there ahead of this and say, well, we're on top of the curve of innovation. And so it becomes a
Mhm.
differentiator for them. and then talk about here's how we're going to use it in the future. Here's how we're preparing for the next iterations of it. So it also gives you a chance to start to future-proof your business a bit and start
Mm.
looking ahead of where the puck is going to be in the future, as opposed to maybe where you are right now with your business.
Yeah, most definitely. And what are you hearing from other business owners that, either they haven't started using it or they're curious about it?
Yeah. So a lot of the businesses I've talked to that I work with are actually using it, and they're
Mm.
using it in some ways to augment the information gathering and research. They're using it
Mm.
to help them ghostwrite emails. They're using it
Yeah.
definitely in the marketing departments, which we've talked about. I actually had a friend of mine who was using it to draft emails to her soccer team. And it
Oh,
doesn't seem like a big deal, but if
but
you
it
add up
is. It
the amount of
is. Yeah.
time that you spend, someone sends you an email, you think about a response, you type it out. This came up
Yeah.
with the response, and she just clicked and sent it. And I mean, that was just like
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
So it's like this combination of all these smaller things that we just spend a lot of time on that
Yeah.
aren't necessarily always the best use of our time, especially if you're
Mhm.
looking at larger companies with tons of people or executives, and they have to do a lot of research and updates and drafting of
Mhm.
emails and things. It just really saves a ton of time.
Yes, it truly does. And, when I think of just getting started on an idea and you're thinking, gosh, I have to write an article or I have to
Hmm.
create a post, and your creative process, I mean, you're just at wit's end because you can't think
Yeah,
about something. So if you just type it in, all of a sudden the ideas start to flow, and things start to surface where you think, oh gosh, the word choice that they're using, I didn't think about that word, or I
it's
didn't think about
beautiful.
that sentence.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's beautiful just to get the process started, and just even to give you ideas. So a lot
yeah,
of people that I've talked to use it just to start generating concepts. Maybe they want to
mhm,
create some content or an idea, or just see what's been done previously. I mean, you can do historical research. I mean, there's just it's just infinite the amount of things you can do with this.
it
And the companies that aren't using it, when I talk to them and I just try to explain, I understand. Look, I'm not saying that the sky is falling and tomorrow you're going to be the in the buggy whip business in a car, in an industry full of cars.
yeah,
But it's going to change things. I do think that we've
yeah,
reached this inflection point where it's going to be, there is before this came into place, and then there's going to be
yeah,
after. And I'm just really trying to help people understand that you need to spend some time really understanding this and really
yes,
starting to think about where it's going to be in 6 months. So how do you prepare for that? Because that's
yeah,
the work I do, is helping companies adapt to change and make changes that are really
mhm,
difficult, and talk about the things that they don't want to talk about, but they need to. And that's really where
yeah,
this fits right into that spot, because it can be challenging for a company, but it can
mhm.
also be a huge opportunity if we can get ahead of it.
Oh, absolutely. And really the whole system, once you get into it, I keep it on my desktop all day long because I'm finding that I'm frequently going back and trying to, okay, I need to do a post or I need to do an article or I need to create an email. And once you get that comfort level with it, don't you agree that once you get that comfort level, the possibilities are just endless?
Yeah, and it's like we all had to learn how to use a search engine. And there's a way you type things in, and there's a way you phrase things, and there's a whole set of commands you can learn to have more accurate Google searches or Bing searches.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to that place with this, right? It's much more conversational. I think it's much more easy to use, much easier. And I think
Yeah.
uh, it's just going to become like your co-pilot. It's going to be the thing that you
Mhm.
sit there with open. They just now announced it's actually being integrated into the Windows operating system, so it'll be
Oh,
right there. So, and
wow.
there's obviously plans to have this as part of the Office suite. So it's going to be
Mhm.
suggesting ways to rephrase things at a deeper level, or things you should
Yeah.
reference if you're writing an article. I mean, it's going to be that assistant that helps you
Mhm.
do everything you do, but do it better. And that's where I think the
Yeah.
future is.
Oh, and you think of Grammarly, you think of some of those things that are out there that we're already using. This is
Hmm.
just that next level of information, like you've described it. I love the way you describe it because to me, from the technical side of things, I know how I'm using it creatively, but the
Hmm.
way that you describe it, from a technical point of view, it people, once they see and hear how it works, I think it's going to catch on with a lot more people that can be using this to save time, save money, not cut out resources. I would think, they're not going to start, letting people go because of, something like this where, oh gosh, now I don't need my person that does my social media, or I don't need,
Mm. Mm-mm.
someone in my marketing department, they can cut back. And I mean, what do you see with, Chat
Mm.
GPT and this kind of a platform
Yeah, yeah. The
with,
way I see it is I see that Chat GPT in its future iterations is going to free us up from some of the tasks that took a lot of time but weren't necessarily
Mhm.
the most value added tasks for your employees or even for
Yeah.
you. So the history of technological innovation is really about bringing costs down so we can spend the money where it actually makes a difference. And
Mhm.
so, if we can free people up to spend more of their human intellect and their creativity on the things, the problems that have not been solved,
Mhm.
and we can give those things that we've kind of figured out to Chat GPT and similar systems, it's just going to free us up. So
Yeah.
now we can go and do things, and I can spend my time doing solving the really interesting problems. And
That's
somebody
true.
who maybe yesterday spent again just 10% of your time or 20% of your time on these tasks that were
Yeah.
the things you felt like you had to do, but you really didn't want to spend your time doing them, but you couldn't get out of it. Now
Mhm.
we have a way to do that.
Exactly. And it's such a robust, wealth of information. And I think what do you see as some of the things that might be a little bit challenging now with Chat GPT? Are there any challenges or obstacles that you can see that have stopped you in your tracks?
I wouldn't say anything has stopped me in my tracks. I do think that we need to look at a couple of things with ChatGPT and its later iterations. I think one of those things is um, attribution. So
Yeah.
when ChatGPT is built on this very very large data set, but actually we're it's from what I've researched, it's only about a 570 gigabyte data set, which is
Mm,
probably smaller than the hard drive in your local computer. So it's just not
yeah.
really not that much data. Um,
Yeah.
so I think as it gets bigger and bigger, and people start making money off of the things they learn in Chat GPT. I mean, there's now books on Amazon that were actually written entirely by Chat GPT,
Oh
right?
my
But
goodness.
all that work, that data set came from somebody. Somebody owned
Yeah.
it. So one of the things that we have to figure out in the future is, well, how do you compensate people who created the data that Chat GPT is now allowing us to access? Because it's not
Mm,
really, right now, if I write a bunch of content on my website and it's amazing content, and
mhm.
Chat GPT and it goes through and crawls my website and is like, wow, this guy knows a lot about change management within complex organizations, and it takes
Yeah.
it and puts it in its data set. How am I compensated for my time and the fact that
That's a very good point.
I was a part of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Yeah.
And I would say the second thing with ChatGPT, if you've experienced this at all, but you can ask it to write things in a certain way. So you could say,
Mhm.
write this essay like I was a specific kind of person. And
Yeah.
so now we end up in a position where you can start to create kind of fake content or fake uh, um, I would say fake creations that you're
Mhm.
trying to attribute back to a real person. And so it can get a little bit more tricky now to know what's
It
true
can.
and
Exactly.
what's
Yeah,
computer generated.
that's right. When you look at someone's website or somebody that wrote a book or, people that are putting information out on social media, that does go through your mind. But then you figure there's got to be an element of research, content that they have, maybe created on their own from years ago, and now
Yeah,
they're just putting it out on, whether it's a book or
yeah,
whatever, kind of
yeah,
platform they're putting it on.
yeah. I mean, I've been around this field long enough. I mean, I was a big programmer back in my day
Yeah.
with various older systems, and I remember when this is going to date me, but back in the 80s when we'd play computer games, for example,
Oh gosh.
and we would,
Yeah.
people would just be copying them, right? There was no such thing as a
Mhm.
copy protection, and there was no attribution, and you could go out
Yeah.
there and just copy a little program. And how did that ever compensate the original creator? It wasn't, right? And that was
Yeah.
a really big problem with software early on, which we
Oh
eventually
yeah.
were able to address, and it's gotten a lot better. It still happens, but I
Mhm.
think that problem is going to really be an issue going forward. And you already hear about
Yeah.
people using Chat GPT to write essays, and so it's going to be, there's some challenges there. There's some challenges,
Yeah.
and if we don't get ahead of this, I'm actually concerned that Chat GPT could be challenged by, people
Or
don't want to make their data accessible, and if we can't make the data
yeah.
accessible, it can't get better. So we need to come up with some
Mm.
sort of a business model by which my company X, that's been in business for 10 or 15 or 20 years, has all this data, and I'd like to make money off of it.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
talked for a long time in software of the big data, and all these companies have been hopefully storing all of their data and their sales data and anything that they've created, all this
Mhm.
original data that they have, and they didn't know what to do with it, but they didn't want to get rid of it. Well, now is a way you can actually monetize that. So you could imagine if you're in the, I don't know, let's say the insurance industry, and you want to write policies, and you'd like to
Mhm.
find, just get the edge, 2% edge on your competition in writing policies on risk,
Yeah.
based upon risk of a property. You could license
Mm.
somebody's database of risk analysis for a bunch of properties and pull that in. And now
Yeah.
you have information that nobody else has. And that
Yeah.
company that made the data gets paid. And then you get paid because now you have a better product. So there's a lot of ways this can become its own market ecosystem as well, if we can figure out this attribution problem, and verify what is good data.
Yeah, that will be interesting, because when you think of the internet, you know, everything is at our fingertips for the most part. And, it's free information. And I know Chat GPT right now is there's no cost, but there will be eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go in and you do any kind of a search, you're led to all these different, places where you can gather information. And I think back of the music industry, and I want to say it was iHeartRadio, and people were saying, a lot of the artists were upset because now they're going to lose revenue,
Mm-hmm.
because their stuff is being played. And I think it had something to do with Jay-Z. I can't remember exactly. I'd have to look back, and I probably shouldn't have mentioned that, but it just kind of reminds me a little bit of that situation that we had way back when,
Yeah, and
the industry.
every time there's kind of one of these major technological leaps forward, we have to step back and see, what does this mean for our industries,
Yeah.
especially the creative industries, right? Because all of a sudden
Mhm.
now you can do things with content or with music or movies, or the spoken
Mhm.
word or the written word, that you just couldn't have done even 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? How do you go from a book to a Kindle? Now we have podcasts, and you can now, I mean, there's so many more opportunities to consume content, which
Mhm.
also then generates revenue, obviously, for the creators.
Yeah.
But then there's also ways to copy it. So we have to figure out what that balance is to make sure that we are still enabling people to make money off of their content, and
That's
energizing them to go do it, because we don't want to say, well, look, you can't make a living doing this, so don't do it, because humanity would lose access to all that genius.
hmm. That's an interesting point. Yeah. So we'll have to think about, okay, well, in 6 months from now, when we'll have to have another conversation here and talk about, what's changed, what's new, what kind of, risks have come up, or things that, that maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe it's going to evolve into something that is going to be really, you know, utilized by companies and individuals everywhere. And you don't know at this point, right?
We don't know where it's headed. I mean,
Yeah.
anybody, we have many guesses. Nobody knows
Mhm.
anything for certain. I think what happens with technology is we develop something, the tool gets put out there, and then the
Yeah.
millions of people in the world, they're all geniuses in their own right, get it, play with it, and find new use cases for it. And then, lo and behold, the invention spawns off a whole new industry and changes things in ways we just didn't foresee.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what's so fascinating about it. Here we are in the early stages. Yes, it started back in November, but there's talk out there that it was available all along, but it was just something that,
Hmm.
that just came out in the kind of on the surface. And we just have a couple of minutes left,
Hmm.
Hassan, but I would love for you to kind of share, what do you really like most about Chat GPT?
So what impresses me with it the most is that it's conversational.
Mhm.
So it allows anybody to find an answer to a very complex problem, because you can
Yeah.
always revise your request to say, tell me, talk to me like I'm 4 years old in this incredibly, quantum mechanics, and it will come up with some way to explain that to you in a way you understand. To me, that's just fascinating, because up until
Mhm.
now, information was just, it could be just difficult. It could be just
Yeah.
difficult to understand. And I think it also brings answers closer to us. So if we look at something like a search engine and you look for a topic, it'll return to a list of websites that it thinks, it being the algorithm has decided are a good match or can provide an answer to you. But now we're able to say, just give me the answer, right? As a human to human, if I ask you, hey, I'm going to go to Greece in a week, which beaches should I visit? If you said to me, that's a great question, Hassan, here's 15 books to read, good luck,
Oh
right? That
gosh.
doesn't really answer my question. What I really want to know
Right.
is, where should I go? Like, you've
Yeah.
already you've already processed all this information. You've got pictures. You sat on the beach. You did whatever. Like, just give me the answer. And
Yeah.
now we're at the spot where we can actually start to do that, and that's incredibly powerful.
Right. And the one thing that we won't get distracted. Think of it, all the search, anytime you like if you search on, Greece, beaches in Greece,
Mhm.
we get so distracted by illustrations, the graph, everything. And I think we get squirrel where, oh, there, that sounds interesting. And then we click off and, go back to our original question where we get away from it. And I see that as a benefit because a lot of people that are really focused on getting their work done, but they can easily get distracted. This is going to be a good fit for them.
Yeah, you get your answer and you can move on. So
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
the focus aspect is a big one as well.
I think so too. And, I really want to thank you, Hassan, because this is a conversation, it's out there, the cat's out of the bag, with Chat GPT. And I think you are definitely a subject matter expert. And I really appreciate you, sharing and just giving us the technical, side of things, because that's important for people to know. And I just want to remind everybody, today we're with Hassan Archer, and he is the founder and CEO of Hassan Archer Consulting. So I was looking to see if we had any questions. We don't have any questions right now, but I'm sure there will be when, once this episode is out there and people have a chance to listen, because there's a lot of people that want to know more. So thank you to our audience for tuning in and watching today. And if you're just catching the episode, feel free to go back to the beginning, because Hassan gives some great information about Chat GPT. And it's that buzzword, that's out there right now. And I think a lot of businesses should be looking into it, because it could definitely save time and really up level, some of the things that your company might be producing out there that, that has taken hours and hours, but now it could be streamlined. So thank you again, Hassan, and we will catch everyone next time. Thank you.
Thank you.